Today I'm going to be looking at this interesting analysis of Solodar in Bakhmut. Let's go.
Welcome to another update. In this one, I'll be doing an update on the general front line, but I'll also be doing a in-depth analysis of Solodar so you get a better picture of what's actually going on within the city. But starting out with the update. In the southern front around Donetsk, we see that the Russian forces are continuing their attacks in the direction of Novomykhailivka, Pobjeda, Marinka, and Krasnohorivka as they try to expand their zone of control west of Donetsk. And the same with Vodian and Pervomaisky, where they try to continue their attacks in these directions. As for the south of Bakhmut, we see the Russian forces attacking in three directions towards Klishchivka, towards the south and the southern trench network of Klishchivka, towards the north and the northern trench network of Klishchivka, and finally the eastern part where they're attacking Klishchivka itself. Further north in the direction of Bakhmut, we see the fighting ongoing within the city, as well as to the northeast of it, where the Russian forces are attacking westwards from Pidhorodne, and at the same time north of Bakhmut, we see the Russian forces attacking both Krasnohora and Paraskovivka from the east. In the northern part around Solodar, we see that the Russian forces have started a new axis of attack here to the south, where they're attacking in the southwestern direction of Solodar, and at the same time we're seeing them attack within the city center itself. So this is actually a very significant development, but we'll go back to that later as we go to the Luhansk front, where the Russian forces are trying to expand their zone of control west of Chernobyl, as it is very vulnerable as it is right now. And further north, they're attacking Silmahivka as they continuously try to gain control over the river line. Now, moving back to Solodar for the analysis, we see here I've been drawing some things to make it clearer what is actually happening. And if we look closely, then I've split it up into
Really?
three things. The first one is the industrial areas, which are three different salt mines. There's this one which is contested right now, as both sides have a hold of a part of it. Then there's this one to the west. This is the middle one, and I call it the second one. And then there's the western one, which is the third one. The second part is that I've mapped out specific places, like this one, which is the Ukrainian defensive position, this one, which is an important hospital, and this one to the west, which is a salt mine. So I've mapped these out with these smaller icons. And then finally, I have drawn the defensive lines of the Ukrainian positions. So how have I determined these defensive lines? It is not because I've seen any evidence, and these are not 100%, but these are drawn out based on what you need in a battle, and whether or not these locations have them, and if so, how are they connected? So first off, we have this northern axis of attack by the Russian forces, and as we can see, there are these residential apartment buildings, and I've drawn out the defensive line to be on this one furthest to the back. And you may ask why this one specifically. Why not all of them, for example? It could be all of them. It most likely is all of them. However, this one is the most significant one, as it is the furthest back, and it is kind of the screening apartment building from the school, which is the main base of the Ukrainian forces. And I know that because schools have underground facilities, and these are the best one in case of Russian artillery strikes, which will definitely happen. So in all of these places, the most safe one is the school. So the Ukrainians most definitely has a outpost or military base within the school in this area. As for the southern area here, there are a lot of apartment buildings. However, there is this clear area to the north and to the east, which means that the most defensible position is this one here. And I've also drawn the red building with it because all of these here are just normal residential buildings, and they are not as close to being defensible as this one is. So they're most likely using this coupled with these apartment buildings to create a defensive position where their focus is this northern area to the east and the southern area where they have two different bases. This is the city council, so that means this is also well reinforced. And then there's the residential areas here to the northeast, and we have seen the video evidence of soldiers moving in this direction and fighting against something to the east, which means that the Ukraine most definitely has a position in this area here. And finally, there are the industrial zones, which are the salt mines. And as we can see, there are 3 of them. There's this one in the center, which is currently contested, as the Russian forces are trying to capture all of it. Then there's the one in the center, and then there's the one in the west. This is why I said this is very significant, this axis of attack, because this means that they will most likely be attacking either the center one or the western industrial zone. If they attack in the western direction, that would leave them vulnerable, as not only are these industrial zones very heavily fortified, but they also have a lot of troops. Which means that if the Russian forces try to go around, then the Ukrainian would dispatch a unit to go and counter them. And if they just attack them straight head on, then they'll be facing a strong force. So essentially, we're seeing the Russian forces most likely attacking this industrial zone here in the center, as they'll try to keep them there as the Russian forces advance to the north, where they'll be able to advance to the western industrial center, and then they will have the whole Soledar area completely encircled. And that is the conclusion of my analysis. I think the Russian forces are trying to advance slowly within the city center, however, not that fast, to prevent more casualties, and at the same time they'll be focusing their attacks on the flanks, where they'll try to encircle the city. However, it will be very difficult because of the location of these salt mines being very strategic, as it prevents any flank attack, as they have these positions to counter the flank attacks. So the Russians will need a heavy, blunt force to counter these Ukrainian positions and completely encircle the city. Currently, they have fire control over the city. As we can see, there is one main road that goes in and out of the city, which is this one. And the Russian forces have fire control from the north towards this location. As for smaller roads, there are some by the southern sector. However, the Russian forces advancing here to the south means that they also have fire control over that. So the city is actually operationally encircled. So while editing this video, I rechecked all my sources, and I saw that there was a Ryber update, and that Ryber update matches perfectly with the positions I've drawn out. So we see this one here, this apartment complex is the last one that hasn't been taken by the Russian forces. At the same time, here in the city center, the Russian forces have achieved success in this sector and are now by the electronics store, which I've also drawn the defensive position. And finally, here in the southeast, there's also this area next to the hospital, where the Russian forces have also reached this defensive position, but have not gone through it. So essentially, the defensive positions that I've drawn up are actually fairly accurate. As for this southern sector, since there is no defensible position, I forgot to mention that I've drawn this icon here, and that is to indicate guerrilla-style defenses, as there will be no one place where the defenses can be set up, then they'll be spread out around. So maybe this building here and then another building there, or just generally moving around constantly, so that they aren't in one place at any time. And they are generally just moving in to intercept from both of these areas. That's the type of defense that is happening there. Anyways, that's going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.
Thank you too, because I hope you guys got an understanding. So it means that slowly, surely, the Russians are pushing deep into Soledar. And that's all I can say. I hope you guys enjoyed this African reaction. I hope to see you on my channel next time. Thank you. Bye.